Hi everyone, it's Saira Reynolds with the Modern Real Estate Team. It is February 2025, and I would say the hottest topic right now is US tariffs and what is going to happen in the housing industry. So I would like to share a little bit of a longer format video to go through some of the key points and things that I'm thinking about when it relates to housing in Victoria compared to what has happened in the history and what we can maybe predict to happen in the future. But first of all, I want to preface this with I am not a crystal ball reader. My crystal ball broke a long time ago, so I don't actually know what's going to happen. Neither does anybody else, including economists. That's just the hot tip when you read economic reports. The reality is no one actually knows what's going to happen. But what we can do is make smart predictions. So the first thing I want to mention is that it is too soon to tell. We don't know actually if these tariffs are going to come into play. We don't know if this is a negotiation tactic or a strategy for the US government. We don't know for sure if it's going to happen. If it does happen, we don't know for how long. Is this going to be a long-term thing, or is this a short-term sort of squeeze play to get Canada to do XYZ? We actually don't know. What we do know is that tariffs are economically depressing in Canada. So if they do come into effect, we can expect the BC and Canadian economy to suffer. Typically what happens when there's this economic uncertainty, in the short term, we will see people take a pause in the housing industry. So people really don't like uncertainty, and we see people take pauses during elections when there's economic uncertainty. We saw it with the 2008 crash. We saw it with the pandemic. As soon as something happens, people just pump the brakes on what they were planning on doing to see kind of how this is going to play out. So I can say for sure we could probably expect a pause. I think people are a little bit nervous right now about what's going to happen, and so a pause is very likely. But pauses, if you think about housing, a pause is like an elastic band. So you're basically holding back demand, and it's like you're holding back this elastic band, and you can only hold demand back for so long. People still have to move. So what ends up happening is it will eventually recoil. So you let go of the elastic band and you start to see a huge amount of activity because everyone's been holding back. So in the short to medium term, if these tariffs do come into play, Canada will usually respond when there's economic uncertainty or an economic depressing economy. They will reduce interest rates to stimulate the economy. So that can cause the housing market to recoil, that demand to recoil, for there to be a huge amount of activity, and that can cause upward pressure on prices temporarily. So I can kind of expect a pause, expect a recoil if their interest rates go down. And I think if these tariffs do come into play and it does cause our economy to become depressed, the fallout in the housing industry doesn't happen instantaneously. It happens 2 to 4 years later. So if you are thinking about real estate in the short term, I don't think you have to worry about prices doing a sharp decline or anything like that. But we look to history. So in 2008, when the 2008 crash happened, 2009 and 2010, those were the rebound years. So it was very active, a very strong market. And then it wasn't until 2011, 2012 and 2013 were probably the worst years. So again, that was like 4 years after the crash of 2008. In the pandemic year, lockdown happened, the market came to a grinding halt. And then as soon as lockdown was over, we saw a huge rebound in the market right up until April 2022, when the interest rate started to go up again. So it wasn't until the end of 2022 and 2023 that we saw the market decline from the fallout of the pandemic. So what I can imagine that if these tariffs come into play, it is going to be a bit of a 2 to 4 year time frame before we start to actually feel the impact of it. But the thing I do want to mention about Victoria specifically is that we are a little bit insulated here because of we have our own little sort of micro economy. So we have a lot of different industries. We have a lot of stable industries, so like military, education, government. These are all industries that fare fairly well during times of economic depression or contraction, what have you. And the other thing to consider is that a huge percentage of people here don't have mortgages. So it's a lot of retirees, a lot of people who are don't have mortgages, and so are less impacted by these market fluctuations. So Victoria typically fares well, even when the rest of Canada is really struggling. So I wanted to leave you with a few tips for for people who are thinking about buying and selling. If you are thinking about buying and selling in the short term, my number one tip is to shut off your media. Like, just stop reading the news, because the news is it's written in a way to make you scared. It's going to give you like worst case scenario, and it's going to make you want to make decisions based out of fear. And that is probably the worst thing you can do with your real estate. You want to be thinking about what you want to create in your life and how you want to move forward with that. And if you are making decisions based on fear, that's typically when I see people make bad decisions. So I'd say turn off the news, stop reading the news. What you can do instead is to read economic reports. You can talk to your professionals, so your mortgage brokers, your realtors, the people in your life who you can trust to give advice about your specific situation. A second tip is really assess your own scenario. So everyone is going to be impacted by this differently. If you are in an industry that is going to be greatly impacted by tariffs, you might really consider your risk, like how much risk you want to take on. So, and again, if you're upsizing and you want to take on more of a mortgage, you might look at that a little bit differently than someone who is downsizing and doesn't have a mortgage. Everyone is going to be impacted by this differently. So really look at your own scenario and assess your own risk tolerance about your making a move right now. And then the third point is you think about real estate as a long-term investment. So if you are buying something or moving to something that you are going to be happy in for 10 years, then it doesn't matter what happens in the short term, because over the long run, you're going to weather the storm. Short-term fluctuations always happen, but it's the long term that you should be thinking about. So the other thing with that is that if you are buying and selling in the same market, just really understanding that you don't want to have too much of a gap between buying and selling. This isn't the time to like sell your home and hope for the market to drop and then buy later. It's if you buy and sell in the same market, you definitely reduce your risk of feeling the impact of the short-term market fluctuations. So I hope you gleaned something from my little chat here about US tariffs and the housing industry. If you have questions, never hesitate to reach out. We're here to help. Definitely get advice from your real estate professionals, and definitely shut off the news, because it is terrible, inflammatory, and you don't want to make decisions based on fear. Thanks. This is Sarah Reynolds with the Modern Real Estate Team.